evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Happy Friday. In your head, you always imagine the revolution, when it starts, will start with tanks and gunfire, with chaos and soldiers in the street. You'll know when it comes. But it never does. Instead, the really big changes to American life, the profound ones that affect all of us forever, those changes almost always begin quietly with gentle pleas for tolerance. We'd like to do things a little differently, they tell you. We'd like to make a change to some custom or belief that people have been attached to for the last few thousand years. But don't be alarmed. It's not a big deal. You don't even need to participate. All we ask is that you let us live the way we want to live. That's always the pitch. And of course, you always agree to it. Why wouldn't you? Who could say no to that? Some guy down the street wants to wear a dress? Okay, fine. Have a party. It doesn't affect you. You don't have to wear a dress. So go ahead. Live and let live. But it turns out that's never actually the deal. The guy down the street wears his dress, but after a while, that's not enough for him. He's still angry. And for some reason, he's angry with you. And that doesn't make sense because you're the person who had no problem with him wearing a dress in the first place. What did you do wrong? Well, the problem is you're not wearing a dress, and neither are your kids. Your normal person clothes, the ones you've always worn, are suddenly immoral. You've got to change immediately. Whoa, wait a second, you say. That's not what we agreed to. You do your thing and I'll do mine. Remember? They don't remember. They don't care. That's not how it works. You don't get to do your thing anymore. The dress guy's in charge now. Everybody's got to do his thing, the dress thing, or face punishment. That's how it goes. Be tolerant becomes show some respect, which evolves very quickly into bow down before us and lick our feet or else we'll hurt you. That's the final stage. That's where we are now. For example, a Democratic lawmaker in Virginia called Elizabeth Guzman is introducing a bill that will charge parents with a felony, strip them of their employment, and imprison them if they don't wholeheartedly endorse their minor children's sex changes. So your 12-year-old daughter says she wants a mastectomy. If you object to that in any way, if you raise questions, Elizabeth Guzman will send you to jail. For real. Here's a local news report.
Her bill would expand the state's definition of child abuse and neglect to include parents who do not affirm their child's gender identity or sexual orientation.
There's an investigation also in place that is not only, from a social worker, but there's also a police investigation before we make the decision that there's going to be a CPS charge.
What could the penalties be if, the investigation concludes and it's concluded that a parent is not affirming of their LGBTQ child? What could the consequences be?
Well, we first have to have an investigation. It could be a felony, it could be a misdemeanor, but we know that a CPS charge could harm, your employment, could harm your education.
So who is this Elizabeth Guzman? Well, Elizabeth Guzman came to this country not so long ago from Peru as a single mother. Now, rather than wait a while, maybe spend a few generations here before telling you how to raise your children in America, she's decided to get right to it and completely change child rearing in this country in a way that would never be tolerated for a second in the country from which she comes. Try that in the Andes, honey, and see how that works. Yeah. But in this country, according to Elizabeth Guzman, you have to affirm your child's sex change or else you're going to prison and the state will raise your kids. Now you got to think, maybe they've wanted this for a while. What would this mean? Well, it would mean fewer intact families. It would mean people like Elizabeth Guzman make the decisions, the meaningful decisions within your house. It means less resistance from you. It means more powerful them. What it doesn't mean is that Elizabeth Guzman will be protecting your kids. She doesn't even claim this law will protect your kids. Instead, she acknowledges the whole point is to, quote, educate parents. Right. So, like the COVID vaccine, this is a pretty easy way to figure out who's on which side. Are you for this? Okay, you're on our team. You're willing to surrender control of your own children to Elizabeth Guzman, who, again, just got here. But if you're not for it, then we know you're not on our team. We know who you are. We can silence you. We can punish you because you refuse to be educated. So it's a signaling mechanism. And you know that because the ideology that underlies it, gender ideology, is completely incoherent. It doesn't make any sense at all. It is not rooted in science. It's a form of religion that's so crazy, it dares you to say something about it. What? You can't even say that. If you do, they know you're on the other side. And it's not just lunatics and ideologues like Elizabeth Guzman from Peru. It's doctors. It's medical professionals. Here's a video from Boston Children's Hospital, one of the most famous hospitals in the world, which, like many hospitals in the United States at this point, under the Joe Biden administration, cuts the breasts off of minor girls for no medically justifiable reason. Watch a practicing psychologist, an attending psychologist at Boston Children's Hospital, explain how early children can become trans.
So most of the patients that we have in the GEMS clinic actually know their gender, usually around the age of puberty, but a good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb, and they will usually express their gender identity as very young children, some as soon as they can talk. They might say phrases such as I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or I'm going to be a woman, or I'm going to be a mom. Kids know very, very early. So in the GEMS clinic we see a variety of young children all the way down to ages 2 and 3, and usually up to the ages of 9.
So that's Carrie McGregor. She's a psychologist. She works at Harvard. I wonder, how many children does Carrie McGregor have? Has she raised a lot of kids? Does she watch kids carefully? Does she know anything about kids? Because she's telling you, if your little kid says, oh, maybe I'm the other sex, that means your kid is the other sex. Well, that's insane, because almost 100% of kids at one point or another, at a certain point in development, say things like, I think I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl. And you smile indulgently. Get back to me in 15 years. But no, says Carrie McGregor, in the womb you can know. So think about what they're telling you. They're telling you that the developing child in the womb is just a part of the mother. Therefore, you can abort that child at any time. It's like an appendectomy. But at the same time, that same cluster of cells, that fetus, can also be woke and ascribe to left liberal gender ideology, and you need to honor that. So no sane person could believe any of this voluntarily. It doesn't even make sense on its face. Again, it's a religion. And if you resist it, they resort immediately to force. No questions allowed. Now, again, this is science. And the essence of science is relentless questioning about what you think you know is true. That is the scientific method. That's science itself. But it's no longer allowed. The American Medical Association, which has utterly beclowned itself, along with the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Children's Hospital Association, just sent a letter to the Attorney General of the United States demanding that the Biden administration, and we're quoting, take swift action to investigate and prosecute high-profile users on social media who have engaged in, quote, disinformation. You hate to always invoke the German government of 80 years ago. But what else is that? That's totalitarian. They're saying if you disagree with what we're doing, people with guns should come and take you away. Now, you'd think someone in the media would point out, wow, we can't have that in the United States, where people are free to believe what they want and to talk about it in public and to ask questions. In fact, they should be encouraged to. But the media don't say anything like that. They're joining with the Children's Hospital Association, the AMA, to call for more censorship at gunpoint. Watch.
Obviously, the question becomes then, when misinformation, disinformation is being spread, when hate and threats are being spread, where are the social media companies? What's YouTube doing? What's Twitter doing? And of course, then you have the reaction to that. Oh, this is big tech silencing people. It always becomes a debate about free speech, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Last week, Twitter suspended Libs of TikTok, specifically for the policy against the promotion of threats, violence, and harassment. So great job, right? But it's been 7 days, and Libs of TikTok is back now, and they're tweeting right this very minute, this is violence, this is harassment. It's clear what these accounts are doing.
It's so funny. Back to the point at the open. When the revolution comes, there won't be tanks and soldiers. There won't be stormtroopers and old uniforms and symbols. It'll be some unmarried 30-year-old woman talking in a sing-songy voice, inflection at the end, right? With her special glasses or complex glasses that don't actually improve her vision. She'll have all kinds of pointless humanities degrees, and she'll be on cable news saying, right, it's violence. And what she's really saying is, shut up and obey or we'll hurt you. She's delivering the same message that any stormtrooper delivers, but she's doing it in a sing-songy way. It's disinformation. Call us literal, but this is the opposite of disinformation. It's not disinformation. This is literally what they're saying. Boston Children's Hospital, as we just showed you on tape, is telling you what they're doing. They perform double mastectomies on minors for no medical reason whatsoever. That's insane. It ought to be a crime. In a civilized country, it would be. And they know that because when they were caught, they tried to erase the evidence. And they're not alone. UCSF, UW Health in Wisconsin, Golisano Children's Hospital in New York, Vanderbilt Health, Children's Minnesota, all of these hospitals have deleted the evidence of their gender-affirming procedures, their grotesque mutilation of children after they were publicized. Their own words were publicized online. No one's twisting it. People are just putting up their words. And not all the videos have been deleted. Planned Parenthood is big into this now because it's lucrative. So here's Planned Parenthood in 2021 telling children that so-called puberty blockers are harmless. Right, that's a lie. And by the way, there's no such thing as a puberty blocker. These drugs are hormone agonists, and they're FDA approved for things like cancer treatment. You get prostate cancer, and they lower your testosterone, for example, to prevent the cancer from growing quickly. They are not approved for so-called puberty blocking. They're unapproved, and the long-term effects are not known, but it's pretty obvious they're grim. But Planned Parenthood won't tell you that. Here's their video.
You're transgender or non-binary. You may find that your puberty experiences don't line up with your gender identity or how you see yourself. That feeling can be uncomfortable, scary, and stressful. If that sounds like you, know that you're not alone. There are medicines you can take to delay puberty for a while. They're called puberty blockers, and they work like a stop sign by halting the hormones testosterone and estrogen that cause puberty changes like facial hair growth and periods. Puberty blockers are safe and can give you more time to figure out what feels right for you, your body, and your gender identity.
Okay, everything about that is dark and horrifying, and there should be an uprising against that. That's aimed at your children, not at adults who can make rational decisions, but children, people too young to drive or drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or serve in the military or vote. People who are not, we have agreed as a group, capable of making rational adult decisions, and that's aimed at them. It's propaganda aimed at them, and it's a lie. Puberty blockers are safe. They are absolutely not safe. You can't delay puberty without damaging severely the bodies of young children. The FDA just identified several, quote, clinically serious cases of side effects after these drugs were recklessly administered to children by lunatic ideologues. The FDA found a, quote, plausible association between the use of puberty blockers and something called intracranial hypertension. Ooh, you want that for your 13-year-old? According to the Mayo Clinic, that condition can cause brain swelling, double vision, severe headaches, permanent vision loss. In other words, brain damage. Brain damage. Oh, great. Okay. On top of that, the European Journal of Endocrinology, among many other publications, has found that so-called puberty blockers often cause, quote, decreased bone density, which is associated with a high risk of osteoporosis. And there are other permanent side effects as well. We don't even know the scope of them because this has never been tested longitudinally, ever. But the effects are very obvious, and if you poke around on the internet for about 4 minutes, you will see them. One teenage girl just uploaded a video showing the effects of 5 years of puberty blockers on her. Watch this.
When I talk about being too far gone, I don't really know what else to call it. This is what I mean. This is how deep my voice is. It's gotten deeper over time, and it's settled. This is what I mean by hair loss. And it just keeps getting worse. It keeps thinning. It keeps receding backwards. You know, and I'm not exactly sure that's coming back. Those are the main things when I talk about being androgenized to a point of no return. This is what happens when you give a woman testosterone. This is for 5 years. This is what happens.
Yeah, that's what happens. That and a lot of other things. That's what they're telling you is gender affirming? No, it's mutilation, it's grotesque, it's destroying people's lives, children's lives. We made a documentary on this for Tucker Carlson Originals, so we spoke to a lot of people who had endured similar torture.
The testosterone kind of had this effect on me where with every step that I took, it would feel good for a short amount of time, but then eventually it's like those same feelings come back up.
There's the initial euphoria that you go through. I changed my gender and everything's going to be wonderful.
It was euphoric. I was like, the feeling I had when I started living as a man was I was free. I was finally who I should have been all along.
But that euphoria was short-lived.
My mental health just got worse. My ability to socialize just got worse. I felt so disconnected from myself. I started using like drugs and alcohol as a crutch, and I was just a total disaster. And the effects of the testosterone on my mental health specifically just made everything 10 million times worse.
I had bought into the lie, and it almost took my life.
It's just awful. And every person who's participating in this, in their moments of clarity, knows that 10 years from now, there will be thousands of vocal victims of this moment of true craziness and hysteria that has gripped our country. People's lives are being destroyed right before us. Most adults are too cowardly to say a word about it. And the Democratic Party is actively doing all it can to promote this, to protect hospitals that are mutilating and destroying the lives of children. In the state of California, always a bellwether, a legislator called Scott Wiener has just sponsored legislation to make California a so-called sanctuary state for kids who want to mutilate their own bodies, to castrate themselves. Scott Wiener, really? Is he a good father? Would you trust this guy within 500 yards of a child? Probably not. Gavin Newsom just signed the bill, of course. So what's the point here? It's certainly not to protect children. It's not protecting them. Any parent will tell you, if you want to protect children, you tell them to take a deep breath and reach adulthood and then make rational decisions about how to live their lives. You would definitely not let them make a decision, an irreversible decision like this, for themselves. You're their parent. That's the whole point. But the Democratic Party doesn't like parents. The Democratic Party is replacing parents with itself. We're in charge now. It's the most recognizable possible move for any totalitarian movement. Break up the family, replace parents with politicians. The state is in charge. The party is in charge, obviously. And it's happening all over the country. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.